sixth session for today. This discussion is: can an open agriculture network unlock opportunities for farmers and startups? And let us welcome with a thunderous round of applause our moderator for today, Mr. Vijayasekar, Senior Operations Officer, International Finance Corporation. Big round of applause, please. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We'd like to welcome Mr. Aneesh Jain, founder and CEO, Unnati. Big round of applause, please. A warm welcome to Mr. Anilkumar SG, founder and CEO, Samunnati. Big round of applause, please. And we'd like to welcome Mr. Hemendra Mathur, venture partner at Bharat Innovation Fund. Big round of applause, please, for all our panelists. And with that, we have this stellar discussion. I hand over to our moderator.
Thanks a lot, Deepthi, much appreciated. And it's a great pleasure to be in the midst of all of you. And to be honest, I think this is my first time that I'm here at the Global Fintech Festival. And as we're walking, somebody mentioned that this is the Mahakumbh, looks like the Mahakumbh, and which is very true, looking at the human sort of bodies all around. I would like to just take the opportunity to introduce what we are going to be discussing today. And it's going to be a little bit open and free-flowing. Okay, we'll try to make it as free-flowing and as open as possible. And we are going to be very critical in terms of looking at it. This whole concept of the open network for agriculture, in some sense, you could say that, built upon what India is now talking big about this whole DPI, the digital public infrastructure, and trying to do the digital public good. We started off with the UPI, and now basically taking it to other sectors. We saw the ONDC as well coming in. There's discussions, there's work going on the health space as well. And now we are, as an intervention, I think people are looking at this whole concept of open network for agriculture. So the construct is all around trying to make it an open network. And where this whole thing came in for us when, we are basically looking at it and at one stage sort of a brainstorming is how do we basically create a platform wherein it becomes easier for a whole bunch of service providers, startups, because today if I'm a startup providing sort of a farm machinery as a service, but then when I try to go to the farmer is asking me, can I get 3 or 4 more services? And I don't want to be dealing with multiple agri-startups with multiple apps and multiple ways to reach out. I need one. Can you please try to address and solve my problem? So what we are seeing is that the agri-techs, as a result of that, are trying to look at pivoting to trying to become a full-stack service provider. Even though their USP might be on one particular product on which they basically built their whole business model, but in order to retain the customers, are now being forced to basically try to become what they were not originally envisaging to be. And that is where we're stuck. And then in the process, what is happening is that a lot of these startups are basically burning cash, because they are trying to basically build all these products and services, which they are not good at in the very first place, because that's not they were basically set up to do. But then they had to do it because that's what the farmer is asking them for. And in the process, they are missing out their own identity as a service provider on which they were really good at, and trying to become what they are not good at, trying to become a full-stack service provider, and in the process basically losing out a whole bunch of social capital as well. And that's where we thought that, how about creating a platform? So give one single sort of an app to the farmer, which in this case would be an open network for agriculture app. And through the app, basically the farmer can basically get any and all types of services that he or she is looking forward for. So today, if I'm a service provider as an agtech, basically doing farm as a machinery, I can be on the part of the app and basically offer my services. Somebody else is basically in the market linkage services. They can plug into the app, and provide those services, similar to what we are seeing on ONDC as well at this point in time. But there's something more very unique for agriculture. So that is the construct, mental frame, okay? But the question is, I think it's great to have that mental frame, okay, but what would it actually take to this becoming a reality? And that's what we are going to be sort of discussing. And with that, let me basically, we have heard the intro, so I'm going to go from my from left to right, and start with Hemendra, and then we'll go to Anil and Anish. We'll try to have around 2 or 3 rounds of just a Q&A. And then we'll come back to you as audience, any questions, any clarifications, anything. And please feel free to interrupt us. We don't have to stick to that format. You're absolutely free to interrupt at any given point in time. So with that, let me start with Hemendra. So Hemendra, what do you see this open network for agriculture doing for startups? What sort of a value do they bring to the startups? Because I know that you've been involved in advising various startups across the country on multiple sort of positions. You're part of the Bharat Ventures, you're part of the Think Ag, you're part of various other sort of high-level committees working with the ministries and other things, and you've interacted with a lot of mentoring a lot of startups. So where do you see this whole concept of the open network of agriculture coming in, and why do you think this could be an interesting sort of a proposition or a game changer for agtechs? Over to you.
Thanks, Vijay. Good to have a session on open networks in GFF. And to answer your question, if I try to demystify what open network can do for startups and as well as for farmers, so on one hand, we have approximately 150 million farmers in the country, each owning about 1 hectare of land. So highly fragmented as compared to many other countries. On the other hand, thankfully, in last 10, 15 years, we got over 10,000 agri-startups, solving for multiple challenges which farmer has: access to market, for example, access to price discovery, access to institutional credit, access to insurance, access to mechanization, right? And typically, most startups have followed some sort of app-based approach. Each startup would have an app. Now look from a farmer perspective, how many apps can he download on his mobile phone, right? And that's where we see significant amount of friction between what farmer needs and what startups are providing. The cost of farmer acquisition itself for a startup is very high in India. Typically upwards of 500, 1,000, 2,000 rupees, which makes it very economically unviable for startups to reach to the farmers, especially the last mile connect with the farmer, right? Forget startups, even if a large public sector bank has to do a loan of 50,000 rupees for a farmer, they may end up incurring 5,000, 10,000 rupees for own onboarding, KYC, processing, recovery, which makes loans unviable, right? And that's where the beauty of open network comes into picture. It's essentially a frictionless, presence-less digital interface between the farmer and the service provider, which could be a startup, an agri-corporate, a financial institution, right? And farmer has the choice to choose the service provider so there's a part of the digital journey happens on the open network itself. Then the digital journey goes to the service provider, and farmer and the startup or farmer or any service provider gets connected between them, or any commercial transaction happens on outside the open network. But open network acts as a bridge between the farmers and the startups, right? And this to me is the way, the channel for startups to pursue, right? Because I don't think any startup has the ability to serve beyond a few thousand, a million farmers at most, using their own channels, own app, etc. And open networks opens it up for everyone. It brings, as I said, the cost of acquisition down. It provides significant amount of choices to the farmer for any service or product that he needs. And at the same time, startups, their viability improves significantly. Unfortunately, the cost of capital and return on capital employed for a lot of startups have been very, very, low. And I think their capital efficiency can go multiple times if open network becomes real. So that is what it brings to the startup.
So if I can basically say that you would see the open network as a platform where the farmers and the agtechs come onto the platform and discover what services are available, at what cost, and all of those things can be discovered. Whereas a transaction, once when the farmer decides to do, goes into the individual, leads you into the individual agtech service providers have to basically complete
and
the
there's a
transaction.
reason for it, because sooner or later, a lot of these open networks are going to be owned by the state governments, right? And I think usually government doesn't want to be a transaction-oriented platform, right? So I believe it's going to be a great discovery platform. It can be a great advisory platform, but the transaction between the farmer and anyone who's selling or buying from the farmer is going to be outside the network.
And the open network is different from the agri stack.
Yeah, so let me also clarify that. agri-startups is essentially a public database developed by the government, as in the architecture is being developed by the government of India, which has 3 pillars: farmer ID, farm ID, crop ID. So just to simplify, it's about 30 or 32 digit number. If you click on this number, you know who the farmer is, where he or she is located, the size of the farm, the crop that he or she is growing. So all this information, which typically takes lots of time and effort to collect, you get that through agri-stack. So this is the architecture which Government of India has built, and it is under implementation. Just to update the audience, there are about 7 crore plus farmers who are already on agri-stack, right? So agri-stack is different. Open network is not a database. It's essentially an interface for anyone to reach out to the farmers who's maybe sitting in any remote location of the country.
Got it. Thank you. Anil, do we see this as the UPI moment? Could open network be the UPI moment for agriculture? Or else, what would it take for it to be the UPI moment?
Thanks, Vijay. Good afternoon or early good evening to all of you. Again, as Vijay mentioned, this is my first time in GFF, and thanks to Vijay's nudge that I got the opportunity to be here and among all of you. So on your question, Vijay, I would say it is yes and yes. Why 2 yeses? First and foremost, the fact that this is a requirement, as partially articulated by Hemendra, is something that makes the first S an important one. The analogy that comes to at least our internal conversations is the networks, the open networks are like the highways. You call them as digital rails or the access points, whatever you call, but metaphorically for me, it is the highway. And the service providers are the ones who develop products and services that can ply on the highway, right? Imagine if the service provider, if say a Nissan or Hyundai or Kia, they have to both construct highway as well as build a vehicle, then you see the amount of resources that would get allocated on both sides. And that is what we at Samunnati have seen in the last 11 years in terms of the transition of what does it take to reach. We call the smallholder farmer a fragmented land holding and hence smallholder farmer. In reality, if you take a slightly larger view of the agri ecosystem as a whole, the ecosystem is completely fragmented. You have the entire inputs as one cohort, so to say. The output, the BFSI segment, banks, essential are financial institutions. Then you have government schemes, then you have research institutions, and the new kids on the block, the startups, broadly speaking. Each of them are trying to engage with the smallholder farmer from the dimension of their own space. The input guys would say, I will engage till the harvest. Beyond that, I don't know what to do with them. Within input, again, you have seeds, crop protection chemicals, and farm equipment. Mind you, the fragmentation within each of this. Farm equipment, the ones who manufacture harvesters are not the same as who manufacture the pump sets and sprayers. So deeply fragmented market, trying to access a smallholder farmer is the conundrum that we always have in agriculture, and we are hoping that the open network will provide the much needed highway for entities which are in the business of providing service. And the beauty is the service providing entities have mushroomed in the last few years. Had that not happened, the startup energy in the agri space, had that not happened, then it is fait accompli. You have a highway. I don't know how many of you are familiar with a port called Hambantota in Sri Lanka, the southernmost tip of Sri Lanka has a massive, beautiful port, not even one ship there. So the ONA could be that if the service providers are not there. Now you have service providers. The beauty of agriculture and why digital rails are important is information is available. When people talk about information asymmetry, it's not that there is lack of information, it's just that the information is sitting in a format that I cannot read. And the moment we formalize this through the open network, whether it is farm data or farmer data or farming data, because the beauty of agri-stack and open network is that you are not linking the farmer to the land holding. Because we do have people who do farming as landless laborers or tenant farmers. So we have to look at the activity called farming than the ownership of the land. Now the moment you bring in that, the host of information that is available to you expands significantly, which would pave way, in my view, bridge between the formal, informal, lack of information to availability of information, which then can lead to service providers providing products and services to apply to these vehicles. And it cannot be one. Again, I would say the diversity of agriculture is so prolific that one size cannot fit all. The maize is not maize in Bihar and in South India. Bihar, they only produce, but there are no processing units. They have to come all the way to Namakkal to get converted into what it is. So once we have the digital rails, then you can customize the products and services on these rails, and that will bring in the economies of scope at the rails and economies of scale for the product, service providers, so to say.
So let me tell you, I was sitting with the erstwhile Chief Secretary of Uttar Pradesh. I think I did a good job in marketing the ONA. So he said that this is something we need to move ahead. But then what I used as an example, and this is where your own experience on the fintech comes in, is probably going to be very critical. I told him that today, if you look at state of UP, only 16% or less than 30% of the farmers have access to formal credit. And the reason is, I said that for a financial institution, before wanting to give credit, there is no footprint. Like when you look at the UPI moment, today, since all the transaction, even the Telawala is doing transaction on the UPI, so you know exactly what is the turnovers, what is the volumes, and everything is happening. And hence, for a credit provider to use that data to come out with an alternative rating tool and be able to provide credit becomes that much more. So I told to this former erstwhile Chief Secretary that why don't we look at basically onboarding the farmers onto the ONA platform. Let all the transactions, let's try to attempt to see as much transactions can happen on the ONA platform, whether purchasing of the input, selling of the commodities and all of those things. So then there is a digital footprint of the transaction being created by the farmer, which currently does not exist. And hence, once when that exists, then for an FI to come in and use the data as an alternative credit scoring tool to be able to provide credit becomes that much more easier. Easier said than done. Now you're been in the agri-finance business. Is it as simple as that, or is it something, this is where I would see that agri-finance, sometimes people say it's much more complicated than the traditional finance. Is it as simple as what one explained?
Well, it sounds simple, but not easy, I would say. I would differentiate between simple and easy. And how to make it practical is first the service provider understanding who their customers are. In the context of Samunnati, our customer is the collective, the FPO. The FPO's customers are the smallholder farmers. Now the FPO should have the ability, in other words, the NHAI to the state highways. The FPO should have the ability to customize this offering to their members through their input shops, their ability to procure, their ability to store, their ability to process. Because there are regional variations that we need to appreciate. The moment you take one single startup in agriculture, going all the way to the farmer, it leads to what you started off the opening remarks, saying the needs of the farmers are comprehensive, and hence you have to end up providing all those, and you suddenly end up doing things that you are not good at in terms of offering to the farmer, and hence you burn out. So what we are hoping is the UPI moment through the ONA, where you have the information, but through the nodes you deploy, And FPOs, in my view, or collectives, in my view, would play an important role in translating the data into an actionable on the ground for the smallholder farmer.
So Anish, let me come to you because, I understand that you've also been trying to work on the ONA as well, and probably you have some practical experience, even though it might be very early stages. What do you see? I know that you're in the business of providing market linkages, support to the farmers. You are in the business of basically providing access to inputs and also advisory services because you're helping farmers to diversify crops and all of those things as well. And if one reads and listens to ONA, they're saying that the ONA platform can basically help in terms of giving a lot of these things. Even on advisory services, we can crowd in if, as part of the platform, if they crowd in, let's say, 30 different advisory service providers, so all those information would be available to the farmer as well through WhatsApp chatbots or whatever it is. And is it as simple, or what is your sort of a sense? Does ONA for a startup, because you're still in the early stages, so that you're basically, does it really help? Like what Hemendra was mentioning, that customer acquisition cost, okay, basically comes down. Is it something that what you see actually happening, or do you foresee that this could potentially have that sort of an impact? And how do you see this ONA, if it's going to help entities like Unnati in terms of basically scaling?
Thanks, Vijay. And thanks a lot for getting us all together. This is also the first time that I'm here at GFF. I think to answer your question, there are 3 points we need to look at. The first is we need to understand the structure of agriculture, which is not just Indian agriculture, agriculture in general. It cannot be an entirely digital platform because there is physical transaction of goods which has to be enabled over here. Which means that if you are selling inputs, physically those inputs have to move to the farmer. The farmer has to physically use those in the field using machines and other service providers. And once the harvest is ready, that harvest has to physically be aggregated and physically be moved somewhere. Digital services or digital platform can enable a lot of this, but at the end of the day, you still need that fulfillment factor to come in over here. That's one. The second is what we call the network effect, right? And which is going to be true for any digital public interface or digital public good which is being created, or any entity. Till the time you don't have a sufficient number of players, both in terms of seekers as well as providers, who are operating on a system, you will not really be able to understand or kind of measure the importance of that. And the challenge for us as we are building ONA together is going to be how do we get sufficient number of farmers interested, even though there might not be a large number of providers available right now, or the other way around. Without having a small number, as in while having a very small number of seekers, how do we get a large number of providers on board? And that is a problem which will have to be solved for. Till the time you solve that problem, and which is generally where networks really have to put in the hard work, is someone will have to compromise and someone will have to kind of go the extra mile to get this network running. The third is going to be what happens as a provider over here, right? So as someone who is going to be leveraging this network to reach out, or leveraging this platform to seek out more farmers or seek out more customers, and how does that engagement happen with them? Let's look at the first part of it, the structure of agriculture. Indian farmers, limited land holding, dispersed land holding. Every farmer is also growing multiple crops generally in the same season. While we are building the agri stack, there is still a dearth of information available about an individual farmer on a real-time basis. And it is going to be challenging to kind of get that updated on a real-time basis. The other challenge is going to be, there is already an existing ecosystem which is servicing that farmer. If effective, ineffective, efficient, inefficient, but it's servicing, right? It builds in its cost. There are a bunch of stakeholders whose livelihood depends on this. The farmers are integrated into that system, and they know that without this ecosystem, their lives are going to fall apart. And this ecosystem is not just a provider of inputs. That person also doubles up as a credit provider. That person also kind of maybe buys at times from the farmer whatever they have grown. There is also a personal relationship which exists over there. It might not be the most efficient system, but it is there. Now, for any network or for any system to come in and start replacing it, you have to have the trust of the individuals who are there. You have to kind of build very efficient delivery mechanisms, both in terms of to the farmer and from the farmer. You have to have very solid information systems in place which are able to kind of understand how crop is happening, how you are kind of passing on different sets of information. And all of it will happen. So I'll kind of also be the devil's advocate over here. Yes, open network for agriculture is a great start, but till the time we don't get it right, we don't kind of showcase it at one place that it is working, it will be very difficult for us to kind of take it to the next district or take it to the next village and make sure that people kind of come on board and start using. And until the time we don't have users, all our efforts are just going to be theoretical. So we'll have to kind of put in that extra effort in getting people onboarded to the system, create a more efficient or kind of create value for them beyond what they are seeing right now in the ecosystem. Which kind of leads to the second part. The third bit about what it kind of does for people like us. When we reach out to individual farmers or as service providers or as participants in the ecosystem, we realize that there is very limited value to be extracted from this entire ecosystem. So as a service provider, Anil is providing loans. Above a certain level, you can't kind of, so the cost of delivery is very high right now. And you know that there is only limited margin available. It is very difficult for you to also monitor some of these services. Recoveries become very important, as in very, very difficult or very expensive. The same happens in terms of delivering inputs, in terms of aggregating, how do you kind of do the quality control. I think there is a role which a neutral platform can play. It will have to bring in the different stakeholders together. It will have to earn the trust of the farmer and all the other intermediaries who are going to be involved over here. Startups like ours will have to go the extra mile to kind of engage. There is definitely great potential because at some point of time, the UPI movement and Amazon is not a bad example, right? What happened with Amazon? Something like this is going to happen in Indian agriculture. And it is going to be driven by a neutral agricultural platform owned and managed by the government, which gives trust and confidence to the different stakeholders. As Anil was mentioning, right? So the government sets the highways, you are a manufacturer, but when you are manufacturing a vehicle, it still has to comply with certain norms. Right? So there will still have to be some level of trust and authentication built onto the entire system to make sure that the entire system works. We'll have to still kind of pilot it, and which we are doing together. I'm sure that this is going to work out. It will require extra hard work in the initial years, but once we kind of get done with the pilot, we've seen the proof of the pudding, then I'm sure it is kind of going to scale up very quickly.
Just to follow up, see, if you look at UP, there are close to about 24 million farmers plus, yeah, farm holdings. If you look today, what proportion is currently being serviced by all the agri-techs and startups and everything else? Maybe around 5-10%, max 5%. Okay. So, which means this whole bunch of farmers currently having absolutely no either access or not basically engaging with any of these startups or any of these innovators. Now, if the government of UP takes up the responsibility or takes up the onus of trying to onboard the farmers onto the OAN platform. So which means the platform could have, let us say, even if not all the 24 million farmers, but even if, let us say, the government of UP makes all the effort and onboards close to about 5,000 farmers onto the platform. And along with that, they basically make available access to various sort of a data, whether it is the agri-stack data, whether it is the mandi data, price data, whether it is the weather data, whether all of those comes in at one single sort of a portal through the open network. And today, if agri-techs are basically scaling up at, say, for example, 1,000 clients acquisition per month or something like that, could this help in terms of basically revolutionizing that? Does it have that scope? What is your sense?
So I definitely agree that this scope is there, and that's the reason why we jumped onto the idea of being a part of the platform. But like I said, till the time we don't demonstrate it, the government cannot kind of just push farmers to come onto the platform and start transacting. You have to demonstrate that there is value to be unlocked and there is long-term value to be created for individual farmers for them to engage with that platform. And that is where the initial cohort will have to work together, make sure that we are delivering value to the last mile, which is basically the farmer, and are able to kind of do it in a way which gives them the assurance that this is not just a one-off. It is not an Amazon festival sale which is happening where you're getting things at 70% discount. This is something which is going to be there with them in the long run. It's not discounted from the investor money, right? So it's kind of going to be long term and is going to stay with them. So we'll have to kind of build that architecture. We'll have to kind of make sure engage with FPOs, cooperatives, engage with other stakeholders to make sure that those channels can be built. And we'll have to build on top of what is already existing. So we shouldn't be kind of recreating things. So the digital interface, obviously, so the individual farmer can get access to the service provider. But the service delivery, you will still have to kind of go down to that individual level. You have to figure out what are the most efficient channels to kind of deliver that, aggregate the produce, bring in quality control, provide advisory. How do you kind of make sure that different moving parts all link up together so that the information or the product or the service which is being delivered to that individual farmer is relevant for them?
So maybe let's pause here and then turn over to our friends in the audience. Anyone, any questions, anything that you would like to ask any of the members, please? Please.
So kindly introduce yourself, then you can ask the question, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. So, and to the panel and everyone. So I am Shubham More, and I am running an agri-tech startup for the last 5 years. And basically, we build a value chain for aromatic crops, and we do everything from propagation of the seedling to manufacturing. So my question is, right now, we are bearing the exposure of funding the farmer for their produce. And can't there be an ecosystem where, since we are for sure going to buy it, we have, like if we go to sell our chemicals, we have LOIs, purchase orders. Can't our contract, our LOIs be the like proof of document for proof of revenue for the farmer to fund their journey as a farmer? So can this help?
Yeah, just we'll take a couple of more and then we'll come back. Thanks a lot. Just to hold on to it, yeah? We'll come to that. Anyone else, please? Yeah, please go ahead. There's one gentleman at the back and then one in the front. One in the back. Yeah.
This open network that we are talking, I have seen, say, marginalized farmers at, say, Marathwada in Maharashtra. Now, all this open network, everyone is joining because they want to derive some value. When it comes to farming, it is not, for a marginalized farmer, it is not just, profit. Sometimes he has to face any calamity. Then, what about insurance? Is the government will run the insurance of the crop through this, or say paying any compensation? Because all the people who are joining this network will come there for profit motive, especially non-farmers. So can we address that aspect also?
Thank you. Your gentleman here in the front.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Azan Merchant, and I'm the CEO of Bharat Intelligence. My question is more about the fundamental architecture of OAN. You compare it to ONDC at the start, and ONDC's entire thesis is don't have one monolith app, have multiple distributed buyer and seller apps. Out here, you're saying there's one OAN app, which then links to everything else. I'm just curious why there's such a fundamentally different approach that's been taken with this, because ONDC tried the same thing, and they ultimately shut down their own app and said, let everyone else develop it.
So one final question, then we'll come back to the panel. You want to tell you?
Hi, I'm Utkarsh Vijay. I'm part of World Bank. So I have two parts, two questions. One is we keep talking about, we compare OAN with UPI. UPI had a very robust architecture. IFSC, RTGS already existed. The payments were already happening. UPI just was created on top of it. Whereas in agriculture, Our basics are not sorted right now on the ground. Land registries are not sorted. The farmer IDs are not sorted. We don't know what is being grown. So what kind of journey are we seeing? Almost like skipping that part of the journey and just moving on to an OAN and how that would be. Second part is, as Aneesh mentioned, that it is all about fulfillment. ONDC already exists, the protocols already exist, and anyone can, right now they are doing mutual funds, credit, etc. It's just putting up one more product on ONDC and plugging in one more product. What we need to take care of is fulfillment. So how are you looking at, any one of you can answer this, how are you looking that this fulfillment problem will be solved on the ground? Give any example, inputs, fertilizer, pesticides, etc. How can we solve that? Those are my two questions.
Thanks. So let's pause here. So Anil, Anish, let's start with you with the LOI thing. I know that you're ready to answer that one.
I think Anil is better placed to answer that, but what I wanted to tell the gentleman was to just speak with the person who was sitting diagonally on his left in front of him. Speak with Prabhakar, who is sitting right in front of you. All your questions will be answered over there. But Anil, I think you are better placed to answer this.
This one. Can the LOI be taken as a proof of the farmer basically, cultivating and the need for basically giving credit?
I would answer this in two perspectives, my friend. One is, if you see from the farmer's perspective up to the collective, unambiguous, yes. What else do you need? Because what I heard you saying is that you are taking the responsibility end to end. As long as you take care of the production risk, which is where most of the risk is perceived to be, and then comes the marketing risk, the LOI should be good enough. But the moment you look at from the top, then they would look at their balance sheet strength and whether that is strong enough to be able to take that risk. And what if that fails, and whether you would be able to honor your commitment to the farmer is where we have a problem. I can just link it to this is question of Utkarsh, right? Utkarsh. The fundamental requirement, I would say, for the ONA to be effective in relation to comparing with UPI is that the data and the players have to be agnostic and ubiquitous. Agriculture being a state subject, again if you say, no, I will allow this, I will not allow this, I will open this only for scheduled commercial banks, I will open it only for the state players, I will keep few guys away, then you will never be able to build. Because what data builds trust, data fosters collaboration, and data fosters scale. If all these three were to happen, then the provider of this highway should be agnostic to which vehicles. Or else if I say only government vehicles to ply on my highway, private vehicles, then private guys will have to build their own highway then. Then there will never be a single highway for that. So that's where the fulfillment question, Utkarsh, that you have will become significantly important, because yes, UPI got built on 3-4 things, but the beauty is the financial regulator of the country has always been agnostic to the providers. And this conference is a proof of that, right? I would like to just quickly tell about the insurance also. My friend, insurance is a question of data. It's always chick and egg. The private insurance companies, other than the government provided insurance companies, there is no financially viable insurance product for agriculture or farmers yet in this country, right? But the moment you start having the data, you can then create beautiful products, right? What I would like to see through ONA, the network, is the moment you sow the seeds, you know that the risk that you are basically dealing with is the risk of germination. You are not worried about the risk of harvest at this point in time. Can we cover the risk of germination during that period? Post-germination, the foliage stage and the flowering stage is where you would be most worried, because that is when most of the pest attacks would happen. Through the network, through the satellite imagery and the data that is being provided to all the insurance providers, are you in a position to say that this is the potential risk and this is the potential remedy that you can have and provide advisory services that you mentioned? And that would basically give confidence to the insurance companies that the phase of vegetation, when the pest attacks are the highest and the vulnerability is the most, is where you would be able to take care of. The third phase is the pre-harvest to harvest phase, where there is a salvage value. You don't need to cover the entire one, because it's not that all grains happen in one go. They happen over a period, and you have a small window there. The risk that you have to look at is what could be the salvage value and what is the risk that I have to provide. Data of sowing to germination to the foliage state to the pre-harvest one, if it is real-time online, I'm sure the insurance companies would be more than willing to structure products. What is it today is, as they say in Hindi, जिसके पास चना है दांत नहीं है, जिसके पास दांत है चना नहीं है. The ones who have the information don't have a risk mitigation. The ones who can provide risk mitigation, which as insurance companies, don't have the data. Somewhere somebody has to bell the cat, and open network can bell the cat, because we are now looking at farming as an activity, not just the farmer who owns the land.
So on the insurance question, let me also clarify. One thing is that here the open network is not about being selective about who the service providers are basically on the platform. Any service provider dealing with any aspect of the agriculture value chain, including credit, insurance, input, market linkage, can come onto the platform and provide those services. Yeah? So there is no discrimination. So if there are insurance companies coming in and wanting to offer insurance products, can as well plug in. So it is not about only the profitable ventures are going to be coming in or the non-profitable ventures. So there is no discrimination on that particular front. Second, to your point, Anil, even in, as what Hemendra was also mentioning, this what we are hoping is that the open network will be owned by the state government. So which means what we are trying to make sure is that all the data sources that is available, whether it is an agri-stack, whether it is various other state-level government-owned data, is all made available, because that becomes a source of truth to any service provider who's coming onto the platform and offering the service, and also with a very clear intent that there will be no discrimination of public, private, cooperative, or any of the types of service providers who are coming in. So that is the second underlying rule as well we have made. So Hemendra, just I know that we are over time, just give us 1 minute. There was a question that came in from the Bharat intelligence and also
So,
on the other questions.
Yeah, last 30 seconds, I know we're out of time. So to Utkarsh and Azan, I think great question. You know, unlike UPI, we don't have any foundational sort of parameters to drive ONA. How I see, it's very interesting that DPIs, ONA, AI, all happening together. So I think, to me, that is the beauty of the open networks. We have DPI, which brings the curated data. We have ONA, which provides the digital interface between the provider and the seeker, as Aneesh explained. We have AI, which can further contextualize the farmer requirement. And I think the kind of AI layers we can build on it could be humongous. But last but not the least, what I call VLE, village level entrepreneur, who's going to provide the last mile connect or the delivery, which is the physical component of ONA. So I think that is how I see it evolving. Early days, but that is potentially the way forward for ONA. Quickly, Azan, to your point in terms of the architecture for ONA, essentially there are 3 components. One is network partner, people like yourself, Anil, Aneesh, who provide services. Then the farmer, which is essentially the user of services. And I believe the farmer mobilization is largely going to be driven by the government. It's impossible for a private sector to drive it at millions of farmers, coming on ONA through their own effort, right? So I think government has to drive it. And the third, which is also a very critical component, is a very, very good UI UX. The third click farmer is going to go away. So you have to solve farmer's problem in the first or the maximum second click. So a beautiful UI UX which can help farmer to transact in a language which he prefers, in a format, video, voice, chatbot. I think it could be a WhatsApp bot, it could be a conversational AI bot. I think that is where the tech stack comes into picture. I think if this component bring together, we have a possible architecture.
Thanks a lot. Final 30 seconds, Anish, if you want to say something.
ONDC, ONA, they are all on the same basic platform. So everything is working on backend protocol. And there are people who've raised the point that ONDC has not been able to succeed. ONDC is doing multiple things. ONA is very specific to agriculture. Agriculture, like we've already been discussing, has its own very different kind of problems which are associated with it. It is not going to just be a digital interface. You will need a physical interface to really kind of deliver the services or the products. So if tomorrow ONDC wants to kind of pick up things from here, I think it's a matter of kind of just replacing the ONA platform with ONDC, and if there are different state governments which want to kind of then get onboarded or the center wants to drive it, I think that should be a possibility. The one thing which I would like to invite over, if every one of us is a router, even all of us as we are building ONA together, we have our doubts about how it is going to operate. These are early days for us. We've just started doing things on the ground. Let's connect in a month and we'll share our contact details. Any one of you who wants to see how this is going to get operational on the ground, I think in a month's time, we'll be ready to really show what is working, what is not working, and how whatever we've tried to kind of get operational is working on the ground. So I would suggest if any one of you wants to kind of really see this in operation, let's connect in a month's time, see, and we'll be happy to take you around over there.
So with that, let me sort of close. Anil, anything you want to say?
I just want to say one sentence.
Please.
Initiatives like this it's not about whether or not. It is when and how. That's about it all.
Thanks a lot. So with that, let me close it, and thank you so much. And thanks to the organizer for being patient with us for running over the time. Thank you, all of you, and let's stay engaged. And we will, you have all our contact details. Feel free to reach out to any one of us or all of us, and we will try to keep you posted with whatever developments is happening in this space. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. It's been our honor to have you as speakers at GFF. So thank you so much. Let's have a resounding round of applause, please, for our speakers. We'd like to take a group photograph, please. I request our team to kindly take a group photograph of the speakers for this very engaging discussion.